Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. For those new here, my name is Nikki. I'm an author and editor and I post videos here on YouTube about writing, editing, reading and all the other things I love. Now today I am here for kind of the latter, all the other things I love category, because I've been wanting for ages to do a bit of a overview for two of my favourite manga, anime, etc. Death Note and Black Butler. Both of these have many adaptations, films, TV, animations, musicals, and I'm huge fans of both stories, and I wanted to just do a little overview of my thoughts on some of these different adaptations. I'm starting off today with Death Note, so I'm going to split this video into sections to handle the different media that I'll be looking at, but I'm going to start with a bit of an overview of the story in case you don't know it. So, Death Note is created by Oba Anabata. It's a story about a high school student, he's 17 years old, called Yagami Lighto, or Light Yagami if we're doing it in the English way. And Light is an incredibly intelligent, gifted student. His father is chief of police and he has a very strong sense of justice. And one day he finds a notebook called the Death Note, and he discovers that if you write someone's name in this book, that person will die. And he uses it to start targeting criminals. Now of course the police, although he's targeting the bad guys, still see this as murder and they're trying to track him down, led by his father. And they enlist the help of a talented young detective called L, who's a kind of contemporary age to Light. He's a little bit eccentric, but he is the guy you call in if you're unable to catch the bad guy on your own. And so the story then continues as a bit of a battle between L and Light. And it's a battle of intellect more than anything as they try to outwit each other. L is trying to discover the identity of Kira, which is the name that's been given to this guy who's going around killing criminals. Meanwhile, Light is trying to discover L's true identity so that he can write his name in the death book and get rid of him, get him out of the way. So that is the basic story. I'm not going to say more than that. I'm going to try very hard in this overview not to spoiler things too much, but that is the basic premise. So from there we're going to move on and talk about all the different media, and obviously we're going to start with the source material, which is the manga. So the manga of Death Note was published originally between 2003 and 2006. There were 12 volumes all up when they were turned into book form, which was then accompanied by a 13th volume which was a how to read guide, which was kind of basically a bit of an encyclopedia of Death Note. They did an omnibus edition, which is the one I own, quite a few years later, and in that it comprised all the 12 volumes as well as some of the 2008 one shot. And in the volume 13 that you have to buy separately, the How to Read book, it included some of the little 4-panel comics and things that they did, plus the original pilot episode of the comic. More recently there has been, just this month actually, February 2020, a new one-shot, about 86-87 pages long, which luckily we've been able to read for free on Viz Media's website, and it's taken the story and set it with a new protagonist in the current day, and that's been really great. So the manga is brilliant. I absolutely love the drawing style, the story works so well, the characters are memorable, the plot is absolutely intriguing and it really keeps you guessing and on the edge of your seat trying to work out who's going to get the upper hand between Light and L. Eventually we do lose L as a character. I'm not going to spoiler it and say how or why, but he becomes replaced by two colleagues of his, Nia and Mello, in the latter part of the story. So that's the manga. I absolutely recommend reading the manga. It's brilliant. It's one of my favourite mangas that I have read so far, and granted I am fairly new to manga, but I think it's absolutely genius and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. It's a really psychological, thrilling, action-packed tale. So from there, let's move on and look at the anime. So the anime of Death Note ran from 2006 to 2007. There were 37 episodes in all, and in addition to that they did two compilation specials, Visions of a God and L's Successors, in which they condensed those 37 episodes into, I think one was about an hour and a half, the other was 2 hours long. This anime really follows the manga almost scene for scene, shot for shot. It's very, very true to the source material. Almost you could say you can either watch the anime or read the manga and you'll get exactly the same story without any real deviation. I really love the voice actors in this piece, particularly the ones playing Elle and Light. I think they came across brilliantly. And as I said, it is, if you like the manga, then you're going to like the anime because there's really no difference between them. But definitely check it out. If you're someone who prefers that anime media to manga, then it's definitely one worth watching. So from there, let's go on to consider the films and TV adaptations. The first film adaptation of Death Note came in 2006. This was actually done over 2 films. They both released in the same year. The first one was called Death Note and the second one was called Death Note: The Last Name. Now, this is an adaptation that really adapts the first half of the manga and the anime. And you may remember I had mentioned earlier that Elle departs the story about halfway through. And so these films are really telling us the story, concluding everything at that point when Elle leaves. So they bring forward some of the action with Light in order to conclude everything at the same time and not have to bring in Nia and Mello as characters. This is important in some ways because obviously the anime ran for 37 episodes. It was reasonably long, and to fit that into 1 or even 2 films is a push. And the easiest way to adapt it is to get rid of those 2 extra characters who come in and condense everything down to just the battle between Elle and Light. Overall, I think these films worked quite well. In a way, I found them a little bit boring at times. I mean, boring maybe is not quite the right word. There's nothing wrong with them. They're fairly well acted, they're fairly well presented. But I think I'd read the manga, I'd seen the anime. It's pretty much the same story again. So there were no surprises. There was nothing to keep me on the edge of my seat. If you're watching these without having seen any of the other material, the manga or anime, then you'll probably enjoy them a bit more, I think. In 2008, they came back and did a film, Elle Changed the World. And the premise of this film is Elle's name has been written in the death note. He only has 23 more days to live, and a case falls into his lap about a deadly virus that's about to be unleashed. And he has these 23 days before he dies in which to try to solve the case and stop the bad guys. I actually found this film really, really engaging. It was great fun. I loved the premise. It was well acted. It was an exciting, action-packed adventure story in many ways. And I definitely recommend it. You probably don't want to watch this unless you're already familiar with Death Note, because it does rely on you having some background knowledge of what's going on with these characters. But if you already know Death Note, then I do recommend checking out Elle Changed the World movie. They then did a 3-part miniseries in 2016, which was called Death Note: New Generation, and this was 3 short introductions to characters who were going to appear in the new movie that was introducing Death Note with new characters and New Generation. This film in 2016 was called Death Note: Light Up the New World, and it had the premise that more Death Notes have been dropped to Earth, 6 in total. And obviously a few of the guys from back in the original film day are still around in the police force, and with help from Elle's successor, they're trying to track down all these notebooks and stop anyone from becoming the new Kira. I thought this worked really well. I was a bit unsure when I first came into it if it was going to have the same impact as the first story without having Elle and Light there. But it did come across brilliantly. It was great fun, a bit like Elle Changed the World. And I think part of that is because it's not the same story, so you're not sure what to expect as you're watching, and you do get some surprises. But definitely, again, it's one for fans. It won't mean as much to you if you're not familiar with the original Death Note material. And finally, we have the 2017 Netflix version of Death Note. I always wonder what to say about this one. For me, it's difficult because it's the first version of Death Note I ever saw. I'd never even heard of Death Note, and I came across the film on Netflix, thought the premise sounded fun and watched it. And I really enjoyed it because I knew nothing about it. I thought it was a fun story idea, And it was after that that I went on to look for the anime and the manga and really got into Death Note in a big way. So from that point of view, I really thank the Netflix film. However, now I have seen these other adaptations and the source material, I can see that it wasn't a good adaptation. It condensed too much into too short a time. It changed L's character far too much, so he didn't come across anywhere near as well as he does in the manga and anime and in these other Japanese film adaptations. So I wouldn't recommend it. If you're coming to Death Note for the first time, I would suggest you do start with the manga or the anime, because they are the best versions. But that's not to say that you can't watch the Netflix version, because as I said, that is how I got into Death Note. So even though I look back now and say it wasn't a great adaptation, I did enjoy it at the time. So finally, with the TV and film adaptations, they did in 2015 a TV drama of 11 episodes. And this one is very interesting for a number of reasons. The main one of those being that they do change the story quite a lot. Now this is interesting because they haven't completely cut out Near and Mellow, which most people do in adaptations. They've kept them in, but done them in a very strange way. And they have changed aspects of the plot as well. They've changed quite a lot about the way Light is presented as a character, particularly early on. At first I found it rather jarring for the first episode or so, but then I did get into it, and I think part of that, again, is coming back to this issue of how well you know the story, and is it interesting if you know what's going to happen in advance. And because they've made these changes, that did keep me on the edge of my seat a bit, because I really wasn't sure where things were going to go because they were altering so much. Overall, I do think it worked as an adaptation. I think it came across well, and I think it was reasonably well acted. I mean, it's TV, it's not got quite the production values of a film, but it looks okay. And I would recommend this, again, if you've already viewed the source material and you know a lot about Death Note. It's probably not where I'd recommend you starting off if you're coming to it with no experience of the story at all. So from there, let's consider some of the other adaptations in both a literary medium and a stage medium. First up, I'd like to discuss the novels. So other than the manga, there have also been several light novels released in 2006 and 2007 initially. So first of all, we had the Los Angeles BB murder cases. Now this is a series of murders, a serial killer who is referred to briefly in the manga as a previous case that Elle has worked on. So this book kind of took us back in time and showed us Elle solving that case in the pre-Death Note days. This was surprisingly enjoyable. I wasn't sure how it would work without the Death Note and without Light in the story, but it came across really well. I was caught out by some of the plot twists, I didn't see them coming, and overall I found it a really enjoyable, fun read. It's, again, you probably do want to know Death Note before you pick it up, but maybe not necessarily, because you could still read it without having known anything that went on in the main Death Note storyline. Next up, the 2007 one was a novelisation of the film I mentioned earlier, Elle Changed the World. In this case, the book was okay, but I think they made the mistake of not following the film exactly. They made changes in the novel from the film, and that made it less exciting. There were bits in the film that were missed out, and I think the book was really lacking because of that, and they put emphasis on different areas that I found a bit more boring. So that's one, I think, just for if you're a really huge fan and you just want to get the whole Death Note collection. It's not one I would recommend rushing to buy straight off. Finally, this last one I haven't had an opportunity to read yet, and it is a novelisation of the other new film I mentioned, Light Up the New World, which came out in 2016 at the same time as the film. So far this has only been released in Japanese and German, not in English, so I only actually recently found out about it. It may be that I'll look for a copy when I go to Tokyo later this year. My Japanese isn't up to reading it yet, but I hope it will be eventually, so I might get one in anticipation as something to work towards. I'd also like to mention at this point the video games and the audio drama. Again, these I can't give a full review on. The video games I haven't played at all. They did several video games for Nintendo DS. The Kira game in 2007, Successors to Elle in 2007, Spiraling Trap in 2008, plus some of the characters appeared in the Jump Stars games, which were games, sort of fighting games based on various Shonen Jump characters. I can't give you a review on any of those because I'm not a gamer, so I've never played any of them. If you have, and you've got some comments on them, do put them below because I'll be interested to hear them. And finally, they also did an audio drama. Now this was in 2018 to 19 this released, and it was in German. It was 12 episodes as a radio kind of drama. You can buy them each episode individually as MP3s and as CDs on places like Amazon, but they are quite pricey. And because of that, the only one I've heard so far is the first episode, which is available for free on YouTube. There were plans to do a French and English version, but so far there's been nothing happening on that front. I wasn't sure what to make of this when I listened to the first episode. It does change things quite a bit, and it really alters Ryuk's character a lot. And Ryuk is kind of the comic relief in some ways in Death Note, and yet they've made him come across as really serious and forbidding in this audio drama, which I didn't really like. I think it changed that too much. It made everything dark and there was no lighter moments. However, obviously I have only heard 1/12 of the series, so I don't know if things would change later. So once again, if you have listened to the whole of this series, do put me a comment below and let me know what you think. So to conclude today's overview, we just need to talk about the musical. So, the musical of Death Note came out in 2015. The music was written by Frank Wildhorn, who is a very well-established Broadway musical theatre composer. He's written shows like Jekyll and Hyde, Scarlet Pimpernel, and in Germany or Austria, Rudolph the musical. So he's coming with a great musical theatre pedigree, and as you would expect from that, the songs are really great. It's a really enjoyable show, the tunes are catchy, and everything about this show just works and comes together well. As with many of the film adaptations, they've condensed the story to eliminate Ni and Mello, so it only focuses on Light and L's battle. You'll have to excuse me, my nose is so itchy today and I'm not sure why. Keep scratching it. So, there have been so far productions of this show in a few places around the world, mainly centred in Japan and South Korea. There's been an English demo recording, but no English full production. And there has also been a Russian production as well. Now you can find music from all these productions on YouTube. You can listen to some of the songs. There's a bit of footage around the place on there too for Japan and South Korea. So I do recommend checking it out. I think the musical is a really excellent adaptation. It encompasses the story so brilliantly. There's some brilliant, memorable, great songs, some wonderful performances. I mean, Teppei Koike, who played L in the original Japanese cast, was absolutely spot on. The way he characterised L was brilliant. I absolutely love watching him and listening to him. If you're a musical theatre fan, this is great. The Japanese love to make musicals out of their manga and anime, and some of them that I've seen are a bit hit and miss. The music's a bit average, unmemorable, the performances are a bit cringeworthy, but this Death Note musical is a really, really good one. Everything comes together brilliantly, and I definitely recommend checking it out if you're a theatre fan and a Death Note fan. So that concludes our overview of Death Note or the adaptations. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any thoughts on any of these adaptations, do pop them in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear them. I will end there for now, but I'll be back again very soon with another vlog for you all. Bye for now.